I was 63 when I first started noticing it. Nothing dramatic, no pain, no warning, just a kind of heaviness in my belly that lingered. Days would pass and things just didn't move the way they used to. At first, I brushed it off like most men my age do. We were raised to endure, not to complain. But one morning, I remember sitting out on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the light stretch across the dew-covered grass, and I realized it had been almost 5 days. 5. I laughed to myself, though there wasn't anything funny about it. Guess the engine's starting to rust, I mumbled. I didn't talk to anyone about it, not even my wife. We were at that stage in marriage where silence speaks more than words. I started drinking more water, skipped the bacon, added bran cereal. Still the same sluggishness, not just in the body, but in my mood too. Constipation, I learned, wasn't just a digestive issue. It was a feeling, a slowing down of everything. One evening, my grandson came over. He's a nutritionist, smart kid. He asked how I was feeling, and I must have looked more tired than usual because he started gently poking. "Grandpa, are you going regularly?" I just laughed. That's how we deal with shame, isn't it? Through humor. But he didn't laugh with me. He just nodded. "You should try prunes," he said. "Prunes?" I frowned. "Aren't those for old people?" He smiled. "You are old people." We both laughed then, but he left a little container on the table before he went. I stared at those wrinkled little fruits like they were medicine. And I don't like medicine. But that night I ate 3, just to see. By the 3rd day something changed. Not dramatically, but quietly. A kind of relief. Not just physical, but emotional. It was as if my body sighed. I didn't realize how heavy I'd been feeling until I didn't feel it anymore. From that day forward, prunes became part of my breakfast. Not because I loved the taste at first, but because I loved the return of ease. They reminded me that the answers we seek are often simple, already in our kitchen, waiting to be remembered. Funny how food becomes medicine when you get older. There's a kind of wisdom that ripens with age. Not the kind you read in books, but the kind you feel when you've lived long enough to realize that silence speaks louder than noise, and that the body, when listened to, knows more than we give it credit for. Another morning, not long after that, I was at the store picking up groceries. My wife had passed by then, and I'd gotten into the habit of cooking for one. A quiet ritual I'd grown to appreciate. I saw a small package of chia seeds on the shelf, something I remembered from a magazine left in the waiting room at the doctor's office. Tiny things, like little specks of nothing, but I thought about how little it took to make a change, and I took a chance. That night, I stirred a spoonful into a glass of water and let it sit until it turned thick and jelly-like. Didn't look very appetizing, I'll admit, but I drank it anyway. By the next morning, I felt lighter, not just in my gut, but in my thoughts too. That fog that sometimes creeps in after days of discomfort, it lifted. My breath felt deeper. I wasn't rushing to the bathroom, but I also wasn't dreading it. I know this might sound odd, but when you've lived long enough, you start to notice how digestion isn't just about food. It's about flow, about rhythm, about movement through life. When you're blocked inside, you're often blocked elsewhere too. In your emotions, your conversations, your willingness to open up. Chia seeds became a daily companion after that. Not for the taste, honestly, they don't have much of one, but because they worked without demanding attention. No side effects, no noise, just nature doing its quiet repair work. If you're still here, leave me a comment and tell me, have you noticed how your body's rhythms change with age? I'd like to hear your story too. Not just the medical part, but how it feels, how it shapes your days. Because this isn't just about digestion. It's about remembering how to listen inward. About accepting the gentle help the earth offers us. One prune, one seed at a time. There's a kind of comfort in warm food that I never appreciated when I was younger. Back then, everything was about speed. Toast in the car, lunch at my desk, coffee always lukewarm because I never finished it on time. But after 60 time slows down, whether you want it to or not. And with that slowing came a kind of quiet hunger, not just for food, but for things that soothed, things that stayed. That's how oatmeal found its way into my mornings. started simple, just a bowl with hot water, nothing fancy. But the warmth, it did something, not just to my stomach, but to the way I approached the day. There was a steadiness to it, a grounding. I'd sit at the table by the window, stirring slowly, watching the steam curl into the air like a soft whisper of memory. Oatmeal didn't promise anything grand. It didn't shout like caffeine or crash like sugar. It just held me, a quiet kind of nourishment that I'd come to need more than I expected. I noticed I wasn't as bloated. That stubborn weight in my gut lightened. I wasn't checking the calendar anymore to see how many days had passed without relief. My body had found its rhythm again, and all it took was a bowl of oats, patience, and a little consistency. But the truth goes deeper than that. I think what oatmeal gave me beyond fiber or digestion was a ritual, a moment of gentleness at the start of each day. And at this stage in life, those small acts of care, they matter more than I ever gave them credit for. That's something I wish we spoke more about. How, after 60, the body begins asking us to listen, not to chase cures or gimmicks, but to return to what is kind, to what is whole. One morning I added blueberries, the next a pinch of cinnamon. Sometimes I'd sit there and think about my mother's kitchen, the way she used to hum while stirring porridge on cold mornings. I used to hate it back then, and now I'd give anything to hear it again. Isn't that how life works? The things we rush past in our youth become the anchors we cling to when the world grows quieter. I was around 67 when I first heard someone say the word comfort food and truly understood what it meant. For me, that was sweet potatoes. Not the candied ones from holiday dinners, though I loved those too. I mean the real kind. Roasted, soft, just a touch of olive oil and sea salt. They reminded me of simplicity, of digging in the garden with my wife, pulling out roots with dirt still clinging to them. She'd smile, hold one up and say, "This one's shaped like your nose." She always had a way of making things lighter. After she passed, I stopped cooking them for a while. Everything reminded me of her, and sweet potatoes especially. But one night I felt this pull, a whisper almost. So I peeled one, chopped it, roasted it slowly, and when I sat down to eat, I swear I heard her laugh in the room. That's the thing about food. It holds more than nutrients, it holds memory, carries stories. And wouldn't you know it, after just a few days of eating them regularly, my digestion thanked me. I felt balanced again, full but not heavy, energized without the crash. My skin even looked brighter, according to my daughter. Funny, isn't it? The very things we used to consider side dishes become central in our later years. I never would have guessed sweet potatoes could offer so much, but they did, and they still do. And maybe that's the real lesson here, that healing doesn't always come from prescriptions or clinics. Sometimes it comes from what grows beneath the soil, from a root pulled from the earth, warmed in an oven, and shared at the table. Now, if you're still here, leave me a comment and tell me, what's that one food that brings you back? That one taste that reminds you of home, or youth, or someone you loved? I'd like to know, because these stories, they connect us. And in a world where everything moves too fast, slowing down to share a memory might be the most healing thing we have left. There are some things you don't expect to make peace with after 60, like silence, or loss, or fermented milk. Yes, kefir. I'll admit, the first time I heard the word, I thought it was something fancy from a restaurant menu I'd never afford. But it showed up in the grocery store one day, tucked between the yogurts and cottage cheese. The bottle looked unassuming. Probiotic cultured milk, it read. I nearly walked right past it, but something in me paused. I've been reading slowly about gut health. Not from medical journals, I never had the patience for those, but from the conversations I overheard at the senior center. You'd be surprised how many stories pass through those plastic chairs and styrofoam coffee cups. The kind of stories that stick with you more than anything on a clipboard. A woman named Alice, she must have been near 78, was the one who first mentioned kefir. "It's not pretty," she said, "but it works." That line stuck with me, so I brought a bottle home. Now, kefir has a tang to it. The first sip made me wince, not because it was bad, but because it was unfamiliar. Like trying to hum a song you've never heard before. But I kept at it, just a little each morning. And that's when I started to feel it. Not just in the usual way, not just the return of regularity, though that came too, but in the way my belly stopped complaining after meals. In the way my pants fit better without me doing anything else. In the way I no longer felt that strange, invisible pressure inside, that quiet discomfort I'd learned to ignore. There's something sacred about that kind of ease. I think we take it for granted until it's gone. How beautiful it is to feel light, unburdened, even if just in the gut. But more than the physical relief, kefir gave me something else. Trust. Trust that my body, even in its 8th decade, still wanted to work with me. If I just give it what it needed. Not punishment, not control, just support, just care. When you're young, you treat your body like a machine. Feed it fast, push it hard, ignore the noises it makes. But after 60, no, maybe after 70, you begin to understand that the body isn't a machine at all. It's a garden. It needs tending, not force, not speed, just quiet, patient care. The kind that takes root over time. The kind that listens before it speaks. I still drink kefir to this day. Not every day, but often enough. I pour it over fruit sometimes. Blend it with banana. Other days, I sip it plain while watching the birds gather on the back fence. And when I do, I think about Alice. I wonder if she's still out there, still drinking her morning dose of not pretty, but it works. God bless her. You know, none of this would have mattered to me when I was younger. I wouldn't have had the patience, the curiosity, or maybe even the humility to admit that something so simple, so ordinary, could heal what medicine hadn't touched. But I've come to believe that simplicity holds more power than we realize. In a world that tries to sell us complicated cures, these quiet foods, these everyday gifts from nature, remind me that healing doesn't shout. It whispers. You have to be still enough to hear it. And now, looking back, I wonder how many other aches in my life could have been eased if I just paused sooner. If I just paid attention. Not to the noise, but to the gentle signs my body gave me all along. A belly that grumbles is more than a digestive issue. Sometimes it's a cry for kindness, for warmth, for rhythm. And kefir, strange and sour as it may be, was one of the kindest things I ever gave myself. I never imagined that something as quiet as digestion could hold such sway over the rest of life. When I was younger, I thought getting older meant stiff joints, slower walking, maybe a little hearing loss. No one ever mentioned how heavy things can feel. Inside, that strange sense of pressure that doesn't show up on any test. But you feel it just the same, like a slow weight behind your belly button. Not pain exactly, just unease. That's what I carried with me for a few years after I turned 60. And I don't think I'm alone in that. The discomfort makes you move less. The lack of movement makes things worse. Your appetite shrinks not because you're full, but because you're tired of eating when it leads to nothing but more discomfort. You stop doing things not because you want to, but because you don't feel quite right. It's a slow fade. But one day, somewhere between habit and curiosity, I roasted a tray of sweet potatoes again. I hadn't done that in a while. The house filled with that warm, earthy scent, and I remembered my wife's voice teasing me. "You always add too much salt." Maybe I did, but that day I kept it simple. A little olive oil, a pinch of cinnamon, nothing else. And when I sat down to eat, I remembered something important. How much of life's healing comes not from effort, but from presence. From being willing to sit with yourself, chew slowly, and let the food do its work. The sweet potato wasn't just sweet. It was grounding.
Y atasluli, no distractions. No TV.
No radio. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breath. And it occurred to me, somewhere between bites, that the act of caring for yourself, even in these small, quiet ways, becomes more sacred the older you get. The next morning, I noticed the difference. Not dramatic.
No fireworks.
But I didn't feel bloated. I didn't hesitate before going to the bathroom. There was ease again. That old, forgotten kind of ease. The one you don't appreciate until it's gone. So I kept eating them. A few slices with dinner. Sometimes mashed. Sometimes cold from the fridge. And it wasn't just my digestion that softened, it was my mood, too. Because here's the truth. When your body feels stuck, your thoughts follow. When your gut is heavy, so is your spirit. But when things flow again, when you wake up with energy and your stomach doesn't feel like a burden, the world opens up a little. You say yes to that walk. You answer the phone when your granddaughter calls. You look out the window and think, maybe I'll plant something this spring. All because you're no longer held back by something as simple and yet as powerful as constipation. Sounds small, doesn't it? But it isn't. I've come to see digestion not just as a function of the body, but as a mirror of the soul. When things are flowing inside, they tend to flow outside too. Thoughts become lighter. Sleep comes easier. Conversations stretch out a bit longer. I remember one afternoon. This must have been a year or two after making all these changes. I sat at the local library, flipping through a gardening book. The librarian, a sweet young woman named Rose, asked if I was working on a project. I said no, just thinking about spring. She smiled and said, "You seem more awake than most people your age." I chuckled, but later that night, her words stayed with me. More awake. I liked that, because truth be told, I did feel more awake. Not in the energetic, youthful way, those days were long behind me, but in the way where the fog had lifted, where things felt clear, balanced, and I believe it started with listening, to the body, to the quiet discomfort, and to the old, unglamorous foods that helped everything come back into rhythm again. You see, people often think healing looks like transformation, like dramatic change, but more often, healing looks like this. A man in his 70s, alone in his kitchen, peeling a sweet potato without rushing, letting the oven warm the house, sitting down, taking a bite and sighing. Not because he's tired, but because something in him remembers what peace feels like. I used to think healing came all at once, that it arrived like a flash of lightning, sudden, undeniable, loud. But that's not how it came for me. Came slowly, quietly. In the mornings I chose oatmeal instead of toast. In the evenings I roasted sweet potatoes instead of ordering takeout. In the moments I added chia seeds to my water without expecting anything miraculous. And in that strange, tangy sip of kefir, swallowed more out of curiosity than certainty. None of it looked like a revolution, but over time it was. I don't say that lightly, because the truth is, I'd been feeling off for years. But like many men my age, I thought it was just aging. The sluggishness, the bloating, the unpredictability of digestion. The way I began to organize my days around whether or not I felt comfortable enough to go out. I thought it was just something I had to live with. But now, looking back, I see it differently. I see a man who just didn't know how to listen. The body speaks in subtle ways. A shift in breath, a knot in the gut, a feeling of tightness that has nothing to do with muscle and everything to do with imbalance. And most of us aren't taught to hear that language. We're taught to push through, to override, to silence discomfort rather than understand it. But when I began to eat differently, not with restriction or guilt, but with curiosity, I started hearing my body more clearly. It wasn't asking for a miracle. It was asking for rhythm, for nourishment, for consistency. I remember one morning, sitting by the window with my bowl of oatmeal and prunes, watching the sun pour through the curtains. It hit the table just so, casting light on the steam rising from my cup. And I thought, this is it. Not a destination, not a cure, just peace. And after 60, peace is one of the most precious things you can feel in your own skin. My digestion isn't perfect. Nothing about me is. I still have days where things slow down, but those days don't carry the same weight anymore. Because I know what to do. I know how to return to what helps. I know how to treat myself gently, like I would a child learning something for the first time. And maybe that's the lesson age keeps trying to teach us. That wisdom isn't knowing everything. It's knowing what matters. And what matters is care. Quiet, consistent care. So if you've been struggling, if you've been carrying that invisible weight in your gut, or your thoughts, or your spirit, I want you to know this. You're not alone. You're not broken. And you don't need to fix yourself overnight. Start small. A spoonful of chia seeds. A bowl of warm oats. A few slices of sweet potato. A glass of kefir that makes you wince but maybe, just maybe, makes you feel lighter tomorrow. And as you do, I hope you notice something. Not just that your digestion improves, though it likely will, but that your relationship with your own body begins to soften. That your mornings feel calmer. That your days have more space. That's what happened to me. I'm 80 now, and I don't run marathons or lift weights, but I move easily. I sleep deeply. I wake up curious. I take walks without worrying where the nearest bathroom is. I eat not just to fill myself, but to honor what's kept me alive this long. And maybe that's the real wisdom no one talks about after 60. That healing isn't about becoming young again. It's about becoming whole again, one bite at a time. So wherever you are on your journey, whether you're 60, 70, or somewhere past that, I hope this gives you something to hold on to. A reminder that it's not too late, that the small things matter, that your body still wants to work with you, not against you. And if you'd like to return, you know where to find me. This space doesn't go anywhere. It'll be here, quietly waiting, just like kefir on the shelf, just like the morning sun through the curtain. Gentle, steady, and ready to offer comfort when you're ready to receive it. Take care of yourself. You've made it this far. You deserve to feel light again.